8 billion souls. A tide of humanity that washes over every continent, erecting monuments of glass and steel that scrape the heavens. We see ourselves in the endless streams of faces on crowded streets, a living testament to our success, and we believe we are an absolute, an immortal species, an unstoppable force. But this grand spectacle of dominance is a profound illusion. For biology is an unforgiving science. It does not know how to lie. And the truth, hidden deep within the coiled architecture of our own DNA, tells a story not of triumph, but of near oblivion. In the grand library of life, humanity is revealed to be one of the most genetically uniform creatures on Earth. Consider the chimpanzee, our closest living relative. Take any two individuals at random from the deep forests of Central Africa. The genetic chasm between them is wider, more varied, than the difference between any two human beings on the entire planet. One standing in a New York skyscraper, the other a nomad on the vast Mongolian steppe. Genetically, they are almost indistinguishable. A single troop of just 50 chimpanzees harbors a richer, more diverse genetic inheritance than all 8 billion of us combined. We are, in biological terms, a species of echoes, an inbred population on a planetary scale. How can this paradox exist? Why would a species that so thoroughly commands its world possess a genome of such delicate, uniform fragility? The answer is etched into the geological record, a deep scar from our distant past. Data drawn from mitochondrial DNA, the maternal thread that connects us all, has confirmed what archaeology long suspected. Our species once collapsed. Around 74,000 years ago, the human population was not measured in billions or even millions. Across the entire face of the Earth, our ancestors were reduced to a flicker. Perhaps only 1,000 to 10,000 breeding pairs remained. All of humanity, every hope, every future song and story could have fit into a single corner of a modern stadium. We are not a great river flowing unbroken through history. We are the descendants of a desperate trickle that found a crack in a dam that nearly held forever. Science calls this a genetic bottleneck. The enemy that drove our species to the very precipice of extinction was not a cataclysm from the stars, no asteroid or alien force. The enemy came from right beneath our feet. To comprehend the scale of that ancient disaster, we must first journey back to a world in its final moments of peace. The Earth, 75,000 years ago, was not some empty wilderness awaiting our arrival. It was a crowded and fiercely competitive stage, populated by multiple human species. It was an age when Homo sapiens was not the sole ruler, and certainly not the strongest. Across the vastness of Eurasia, our cousins held dominion over lands they had mastered for hundreds of thousands of years. In the frigid north, the Neanderthals reigned. Brawny, powerful hunters with brains even larger than our own, they were the undisputed masters of Ice Age Europe, adept with fire and capable of bringing down the colossal mammoth. Their existence was a testament to endurance, a story of success written in stone and bone. They were not destined to fail, they were thriving, and they were not alone. 74,000 years before our time, the Earth was not yet our own. It was a world of many humanities, a mosaic of hominin cousins, each carving out a life on a planet of breathtaking hostility and beauty. Across the vast frozen plains of Eurasia, the Neanderthals held dominion. Masters of the mammoth hunt, they thrived in the bitter cold, their stocky frames a testament to generations of adaptation. They were a people of brutal ambush tactics, but also of nascent spirituality, laying their dead to rest in shallow graves, the first faint whispers of ritual in a silent world. Far to the east, deep within the caves of the Altai Mountains and the high plateau of Tibet, lived a ghost lineage, the mysterious Denisovans. Known to us only by a finger bone, a few teeth, and a fragment of a skull, their true story is written not in stone, but in the blood of modern peoples. They possessed a remarkable genome, a biological key that unlocks survival at altitudes where the air is a thin, unforgiving veil, a place where other humans would falter and fail. And in the humid tropics of Southeast Asia, a living history endured. On the island of Java, the last populations of Homo erectus, arguably the most successful human species in history, clung to existence, the final embers of a fire that had burned for nearly 2 million years. They were not alone. On the nearby island of Flores, the diminutive Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbits, navigated their forested world, while in the Philippines, Homo luzonensis represented yet another branch on our tangled family tree. Meanwhile, our own direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, were still largely confined to the cradle of Africa. But they were not idle within the coastal place, a turning point in cognition. This was no longer just about survival, about sharpening a stone to a finer edge. Here, the human mind was turning inward, beginning to dream in symbols. They learned to grind red clay, ochre, into a vibrant powder, not for a tool, but for an idea, to paint upon the walls of their world, and perhaps upon their own skin. They meticulously pierced tiny shells, stringing them together, creating the planet's first known jewelry. This was the birth of abstract thought, the dawn of complex language, the moment we began to ask not just what, but why. They were standing on the threshold of a civilizational explosion, and with a new and restless confidence, small bands began to push beyond the familiar, making exploratory migrations out of Africa, across the Arabian Peninsula, seeking new lands under new stars. To them, the future must have seemed a wide and open expanse. They could not have known, they could not have imagined that all these evolutionary journeys, these scattered sparks of culture and consciousness, were about to be placed upon the scales of a planetary judgment. The epicenter of this impending destruction lay more than 7,000 kilometers from Africa, on the island of Sumatra in present-day Indonesia. Today, Lake Toba is a place of impossible tranquility. Its calm, crystal blue waters stretch for 100 kilometers, a mirror to the sky, perfectly concealing the monster that sleeps beneath. Geologically, Toba is not a volcano in the way we imagine one power. When it erupts, it does not build a mountain. It leaves behind a void, a giant caldera that swallows the Earth's surface whole. Beneath the rich soil of Sumatra lies a zone of immense geological violence. Here, the colossal Indo-Australian tectonic plate grinds relentlessly under the Eurasian plate, a slow-motion collision happening at a rate of several centimeters per year. The horrific friction generated at this depth melts solid rock, creating a vast and growing reservoir of vents. The geological struthus, subterranean chamber, continued to swell, an infernal aneurysm accumulating trillions of tons of molten rock and compressed, superheated gas. It grew so large, so buoyant, that it began to lift the very island of Sumatra, creating a vast geolo. In the final years, the final months, the warning signs would have been undeniable. The Earth itself would have seemed sick, groundwater would have begun to boil, the air would have grown heavy with the stench of sulfur as poisonous gases seeped from fissures in the strained ground. For the creatures living on this dome, the world was becoming a fever dream, a prelude to a fire that would darken the sun. The planet was holding its breath, and humanity, in all its glorious diversity, was utterly oblivious to the fact that its story was about to be interrupted by the single greatest cataclysm of the last 2 million years. The survival of one of these human forms, and the extinction of others, may well have been decided not by ingenuity or strength, but by the random fury of the Earth itself. In a time before written history, when humanity was a scattered and fragile species, the Earth itself was growing restless. On the island of Sumatra, the ground had begun to speak a language of impending doom. Deep fissures, bleeding sulfurous gases, scarred the landscape, poisoning the soil and killing off the vegetation in creeping, sterile patches. The world was in a constant state of tremor, a low, unceasing hum that resonated through the very bones of all living things. A deep, unsettling vibration that promised the end of stillness. The more sensitive inhabitants of this ancient world knew a change was coming. Across Southeast Asia, great herds of elephants grew skittish. Tigers, the apex predators of the jungle, abandoned their ancestral hunting grounds. troops of monkeys chattered with a new, frantic anxiety. They could feel the unrest emanating from deep within the planet's core, a warning they could not comprehend but instinctively obeyed, beginning a desperate, silent migration away from an unseen epicenter of dread. But for the hominins, the signs were illegible. The communities of Homo erectus, living on the nearby island of Java, and the fledgling groups of Homo sapiens further afield, were utterly oblivious to the planet's inner turmoil. Their world was one of stone tools and fire, of the hunt and the horizon. They possessed no seismographs to detect the groaning of the crust, no science to tell them that they lived upon the lid of a geological time bomb, a cauldron of unimaginable pressure holding a destructive power vastly greater than the entire nuclear arsenal of the future. They continued their lives, tracking game, gathering roots, and gazing up at a clear, brilliant blue sky, unaware that these were the final days they would ever see the sun in its full, unobstructed glory. Deep below, the strain on the rock had reached its absolute physical limit. The planet could endure no more, and on one fateful morning, approximately 74,000 years ago, the caldera of hell was breached. The event began not with a thunderous explosion, but with a terrifying, silent failure. When the colossal pressure of the magma chamber finally exceeded the structural integrity of the granite crust above, the dome did not burst, it collapsed. An immense roof of rock and earth, billions of tons in weight, plummeted into the boiling, superheated heart of the Earth. This created a massive piston effect, a planetary syringe that ejected the molten contents of the chamber with inconceivable force, propelling it high into the heavens. This was the eruption of Toba, the most violent volcanic event to scar the face of this planet in the last 25 million years. To comprehend the scale of this monster is to confront the limits of human imagination. Our modern reference points for disaster, etched into our history with fire and ash, are rendered insignificant. The eruption of Krakatoa in 1883, an event that destroyed its own island, produced the loudest sound in recorded history and claimed 36,000 lives, was, when compared to Toba, merely a firecracker. Geologists estimate the Toba eruption unleashed the energy equivalent of 1 gigaton of TNT. This is a figure some 3,000 times greater than the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. More chillingly still, it was tens of thousands of times more powerful than the atomic bomb that leveled Hiroshima. This was not a geological event, this was a planetary reset. In the opening moments, a violent column of ash, rock, and superheated gas punched a hole through the sky, shooting straight into the stratosphere to an altitude of nearly 50 kilometers, the very threshold of space. But the true indiscriminate death came not from above, but from the ground. The collapse generated pyroclastic flows, an incandescent, solid avalanche of toxic gas, ash, and molten rock, moving at a blistering, inescapable speed of up to 700 kilometers per hour. The temperature inside these galloping clouds of annihilation reached 1,000 degrees Celsius. This torrent of planetary fury swept across the entirety of Sumatra, leaped across the Strait of Malacca, and scorched the shores of what is now Malaysia. Any living creature in its path, tiger, elephant, rhinoceros, or the scattered clans of Homo erectus living within a radius of hundreds of kilometers, had no chance of escape. There was no time to run, no place to hide. They were not buried, they were not burned, they were instantly vaporized, unwritten from existence in a flash of searing heat. The Earth does not forget such wounds. It simply grinds them down with the slow, inexorable passage of eons. The caldera left behind became a serene lake, its placid waters belying the violence of its birth. But beneath the surface, the planet's deep, slow memory holds the blueprint for fires that can erase a world. A humbling reminder that our tenure here is not a birthright, but a fragile, fleeting privilege, lived out upon the thin, breakable crust of a still burning world. In an instant, the world was fire. A wave of incandescent heat, born from the planet's molten heart, scoured the landscape. For every living thing caught in its path, the water that gave them life became their undoing. It flash-boiled within their cells, a violent, explosive transformation that tore soft tissue to shreds and incinerated bone to fine, gray ash. Within hours, an entire ecosystem, the lush, tropical paradise of Southeast Asia, was erased from existence, a biological slate wiped clean by a power beyond comprehension. The sound of the eruption was not merely a noise, it was a physical weapon. Acoustic simulations reveal a concussive wave of such impossible force that it would have ruptured the eardrums of any creature within a radius of several hundred miles. 3,000 kilometers away, across the vastness of the Indian Ocean, witnesses would have heard it not as a distant rumble, but as a deafening thunderclap that tore the sky asunder. Yet even this audible fury was dwarfed by thought words, a ghostly shockwave that circled the globe multiple times. In the ancient rift valleys of Africa, our distant ancestors, who could not have heard the blast, would have felt it. The very ground beneath their feet would have trembled with a deep, unsettling shudder, a primordial vibration that spoke of a world thrown into violent chaos. But this immediate physical destruction was only the prelude. The true cataclysm was what Toba hurled into the heavens. An almost unimaginable volume of rock and ash, some 2,800 cubic kilometers, was blasted into the atmosphere. To give this figure scale, it is enough material to entomb the entire continental United States beneath a suffocating blanket of ash 30 centimeters deep. Seized by the powerful winds of the stratosphere, this planetary shroud of death began its inexorable journey across the globe. In India, it arrived not as a gentle dusting, but as a deluge. Archaeologists today unearth the evidence, a dense, consolidated layer of Toba ash, known as the young Toba tuff, that in some locations measures up to 6 meters thick. It is a scar in the geological record, a tombstone for a lost world. Imagine the Indian subcontinent, a vibrant land of rivers and forests, buried beneath 6 meters of hot, toxic ash. Every source of fresh water was poisoned. Every plant, every blade of grass was smothered. For the ancient human populations living there, perhaps pioneering groups of Homo sapiens or their hardy cousins, Homo heidelbergensis, it was a true apocalypse. At the Jwalapuram site in southern India, a silent testament remains. Stone tools, the signature of human ingenuity, are found just below this choking layer, and then again just above it. Life, against all odds, endured. But the price of that survival was the utter annihilation of their world. Within weeks, a new and terrifying phase of the extinction began. The skies themselves began to transform. Billions of tons of sulfur dioxide, injected into the stratosphere alongside the ash, commenced a planetary-scale alchemical reaction. Mixing with water vapor, it formed a persistent, globe-spanning veil of sulfuric acid aerosols. The sun, the engine of all life on Earth, began to fade. Daylight devolved into a perpetual, ghostly twilight. The moon vanished from the night sky. The familiar blue of the heavens was replaced by a murky, blood-red haze, the color of a world bleeding out. Toba had not just shattered an island, it had found the light switch for the entire planet and turned it off. And when the light went out, the cold arrived. After the geological roar that had shaken the world, a profound silence began to fall. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of creeping death, seeping into every ecosystem, every corner of the planet. The ash and sulfur that choked the high atmosphere were beyond the reach of the weather, beyond the cleansing power of rain. They remained suspended, a global parasol blocking the sun's life-giving warmth for years. The planet was plunged into a volcanic winter, an age of darkness and ice that pushed life to the very brink. The story of Toba is therefore more than the story of a volcano. It is the story of a planetary near-death experience. A reminder that the world we inhabit is governed by forces of unimaginable scale. Our own survival, the fact that a thread of humanity endured this global winter, is a testament to a resilience we rarely comprehend. We are the descendants of the few who stared into the ash-choked twilight and did not break. A legacy written not in stone, but in the very fact of our existence. In the upper atmosphere, a chemical alchemy of planetary scale was set in motion. Sulfur gas, the Earth's own poisonous breath, began to react with water vapor, coalescing into billions upon billions of microscopic droplets of sulfuric acid. These aerosol particles, impossibly small yet infinite in number, bonded together. They wove a gossamer shroud that enveloped the entire world, a massive reflective veil that would act as a mirror of death. It was a perverse filter. It allowed the planet's own heat to bleed out into the cold vacuum of space, yet it denied the entry of life-giving sunlight, reflecting it back through the thin air. The result was an immediate and devastating climate catastrophe, a phenomenon that science now calls a volcanic winter. Deep within the frozen archives of Greenland and Antarctica, ancient ice cores hold the memory of this cataclysm. Their layered story reveals that global average temperatures dropped abruptly, plunging by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius in the span of just a few months. This figure may sound deceptively modest, but within the exquisitely balanced machinery of Earth's climate, it was an absolute collapse. For comparison, the Great Chill of the Little Ice Age in medieval times required a temperature drop of less than 1 degree Celsius to stage frost fairs on a frozen River Thames and to trigger widespread famine across Europe. With Toba's 5-degree plunge, the consequences were many orders of magnitude more catastrophic. At high latitudes, across what would become Europe and North Asia, the very concept of summer was erased from the calendar of nature. Average summer temperatures plummeted by as much as 15 degrees Celsius. Heavy snow fell in the heart of July. Rivers, once arteries of life, froze solid and remained so. Even the Neanderthals of Europe, masters of Ice Age survival, found themselves in a struggle beyond precedent as their great herds of prey, the very source of their existence, froze to death where they stood, statues of ice on endless white plains. But the cold, the biting frost, was not the most efficient executioner. The true killer, which throttled life at the cellular level, was the darkness. As the stratospheric veil thickened, the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth's surface plummeted. Photosynthesis, the foundational process that powers the entire biosphere, the silent conversion of light into life, ground to a halt. A global collapse of vegetation began. This was not the gentle seasonal shedding of leaves. This was the systemic starvation of the world's plant life. Tropical jungles, vibrant with life, withered into skeletal remains. Lush grasslands bleached into fields of brittle, burnt stubble. This catastrophe cascaded through the food chain with the finality of falling dominoes. Without fresh greenery, the giant herbivores, the megafauna such as mammoths, deer, and bison, began to starve in colossal numbers. They wandered across gray, dying lands, gnawing on barren tree trunks before finally collapsing from exhaustion. Their carcasses, perfectly preserved by the deep freeze, lay scattered across the silent landscape, frozen monuments to a vibrant era now lost. And as the prey vanished, the apex predators, including a fledgling species known as Homo sapiens, were plunged into an age of extreme desperation. In Africa, the cradle and final bastion of our ancestors, the impact of Toba did not manifest as a world-ending blizzard. It arrived in a form altogether more insidious and perhaps even more brutal. The planet had spoken, demonstrating with terrifying clarity that the intricate web of life and humanity's place within it hangs by the most slender of threads. In the face of such cosmic power, our own survival is revealed not as a birthright, but as a fragile, fleeting accident. A change began in the sky. The sun, once a deity of life-giving fire, was now a sickly, watercolor smudge behind a terrifying, persistent haze of red dust. This was not an omen, it was a symptom of a world unraveling. The great engine of the planet, the global ocean, was cooling. As its temperatures plummeted, the vast process of evaporation, the very breath of the seas, slowed to a whisper. Earth's water cycle, the intricate system of exchange that had governed life for eons, was broken. Across the dark continent, the consequences were absolute. The tropical rains, the lifeblood that nourished the heart of Africa, simply ceased. The monsoons, those reliable couriers of moisture, failed to blow. The clouds, pregnant with water, never arrived. Deep within the geological record, in the silent archives of sediment cores drilled from the bottom of Lake Malawi, the story is written in layers of ancient mud. During this age of thirst, the lake levels fell to depths never before seen, receding in some places by as much as 500 meters. A giant freshwater sea, a source of life for countless species, fractured and died. It became a chain of disconnected, stagnant pools, a bitter, toxic brew of salt and poison where life once teemed. The Great Congo rainforest, the planet's green lung, gasped and shrank, reduced to small, isolated patches of its former glory. The endless green savannas, where our ancestors had roamed and hunted for hundreds of thousands of years, burned under the anemic sun, their grasses withering until only red desert remained. The African ecosystem, the very cradle that had nurtured and protected humanity, had turned its back on its children. For the scattered bands of Homo sapiens living in this collapsing world, it was the end of everything. They possessed no language for climatology, no concept of volcanoes or plate tectonics. In their minds, the spirits had grown angry, the gods had abandoned them, the clean water the acid of toxic rains. The hunt became a ritual of failure. Men would return to their caves empty-handed, their spears unstained, their families hollowed by hunger. The very fabric of their society began to tear. Large tribes, held together by kinship and shared success, disintegrated into smaller, desperate factions. The ancient social structures, the rules of sharing and mutual support, broke down under the immense pressure of starvation. The elderly, the keepers of wisdom, and the children, the vessels of the future, were the first to perish. Weakened by chronic hunger, their immune systems collapsed. Disease swept through the small groups huddled together for warmth in cold, damp caves. Survival became a brutal, solitary calculus. The competition for the last remaining scraps of life was stripped of all ceremony and compassion. There was no more sharing, no more empathy. In the delirium of frantic hunger, human beings were forced to confront the most horrifying of moral choices, simply to see another sunrise. Across the continent, a profound silence fell. The villages and hunting camps that once echoed with laughter and the sounds of life were now ghost-haunted landscapes of despair. The human population entered a vertical freefall. Our species' biological graph, a line representing millennia of slow, steady progress, plunged straight into the abyss, nearing the terminal point of zero. The bottleneck began to tighten, preparing to choke the last breaths of humanity from the face of the earth. There is a number. It is not merely a statistic. It is the razor's edge between existence and nothingness. According to the most complex genetic calculation models, forged from the DNA of every living person today, the total number of Homo sapiens on the entire planet dropped to the lowest level in our history. The most pessimistic estimates suggest that only 1,000 to 3,000 breeding pairs remain. A few more optimistic models offer a figure of 10,000 individuals. But whatever the precise number, the truth it represents is breathtakingly cruel. The entire human population at that time, every man, woman, and child carrying the potential to build civilizations, to write poetry, to walk on the moon, could have fit comfortably within a small, modern town. They were a whisper in the geological record, a species on the verge of being erased without a trace. We exist because, against all odds, they endured. Their resilience is the ghost in our genome, a silent, ancestral testament to the thin, fragile line that separates the world that is from the world that might never have been. Some 75,000 years ago, the Earth held its breath. Beneath the island of Sumatra, a chamber of magma swelled to an unthinkable pressure and then ruptured. The Toba supervolcano erupted, an event of such apocalyptic scale it defies modern comprehension. It plunged the planet into a volcanic winter that would last for years, blotting out the sun with a veil of ash, poisoning the rains, and killing the life upon which our ancestors depended. In the aftermath, humanity was brought to its knees. The global population of Homo sapiens, a species that had not yet built pyramids, written the laws of physics, or dreamed of stepping on the moon, was sized down to a sliver. The total number of breeding individuals left on the entire planet was perhaps no more than 10,000 souls. It may have been as few as 3,000, a number so small it could barely fill a large village today. If one were to gather every surviving man, woman, and child from this period and place them upon a modern cruise liner, the vessel would sail with countless empty cabins. We had, in an instant of geological time, become one of the most critically endangered species on Earth. Our numbers were fewer than the black rhinos that wander the African savanna, fewer than the giant pandas that cling to existence in the mountains of China. We were a flicker in the darkness, a whisper away from silence. When a population is crushed to such a desperate low, a strange and powerful force takes hold. Biologists call it genetic drift. Before the cataclysm, the human genome was a vast and sprawling library, containing millions of unique volumes of adaptation. There were books written in the language of disease resistance, chapters detailing tolerance to heat, and entire sections dedicated to strength and endurance. But when the ash fell and the long winter began, that library was set ablaze. The flames cared little for which books were most profound. Thousands upon thousands of precious genetic variants, the hard-won wisdom of our evolution, were lost forever, not because they were inferior, but simply because the individuals who carried them perished before they could pass them on. The survivors were not necessarily the strongest or the fastest or the most intelligent. In many cases, they were merely the luckiest. And in their isolation, trapped in a fractured and hostile world, they were forced to break nature's oldest taboo. They turned to inbreeding. It was not a choice born of ignorance, but a grim necessity dictated by the stark absence of anyone else. In tiny, huddled bands, separated by newly formed deserts and plains of volcanic glass, mating with close relatives was the only path to continue the lineage. The consequence is etched into the DNA of every human being alive today. Our genome, once a vibrant tapestry, became profoundly homogenized. The rich diversity was wiped out, replaced by a startling uniformity. It is why, in the 21st century, an organ can be transplanted from a donor in Asia to a recipient in Africa with a remarkable chance of success. This deep biological kinship, this shared vulnerability, is the permanent scar that Toba left in our blood. But these genetic markers are merely the cold arithmetic of survival. The human reality behind those numbers was a landscape of waking horror that stretched across millennia. Archaeological records from this period show a stark and terrifying cultural rupture. The knowledge of generations, the intricate art of knapping flint into sophisticated tools, simply vanished in many regions. Complex trade routes, the tentative threads that once connected disparate groups, were severed. The world, once a landscape of possibility, shrank until it was no larger than the horizon visible to the naked eye. For those who endured, every sunrise was the beginning of a desperate struggle against starvation. As the great beasts of the plains died out, our ancestors were reduced to eating anything that could be chewed and swallowed. They dug for fibrous, unpalatable roots. They learned the skittering protein of insects. They scavenged the foul meat of carcasses left by predators more successful than they. And they faced the final taboo. While the stones and bones rarely confessed such acts, under the relentless pressure of extinction, cannibalism was no longer an unthinkable horror, but a shadow that stalked the firelight. When the boundaries of morality are eroded by the gnawing instinct to live, one's own kind is both family and, potentially, a final source of sustenance. This profound isolation bred a deep and abiding fear. Small, desperate groups became intensely xenophobic. An encounter with strangers was no longer an opportunity for trade or kinship, but a mortal threat in the zero-sum game for a handful of berries or a sip of clean water. It is almost certain that brutal, intimate wars broke out, not for territory or glory, but for a warm cave to survive another winter, or a patch of coastline where the shellfish still clung to the rocks. Life was reduced to its most elemental, most brutal form. And yet, we survived. From these scattered, terrified remnants, we rose again. Every city, every nation, every symphony, every scientific discovery is a testament to the resilience of those few thousand who refused to let the darkness win. We are all the children of this single, near-fatal event. Our global civilization, in all its sprawling complexity, is an impossible miracle built upon the memory of ash and the quiet endurance of a handful of ancestors who learned to live in a world that had already ended. In the umbra of a world remade, compassion became a currency too dear to spend. 74,000 years ago, the sky fell. Not in a rain of fire, but in a choking, perpetual twilight of ash. The great Toba supervolcano had erupted, plunging the Earth into a volcanic winter that would last for a decade, and an ice age that would grip it for 1,000 years more. For the scattered tribes of early Homo sapiens, the sun became a pale rumor, a ghost in a gray firmament. Life, once a struggle, was now a purgatory. It was here, in this planetary tomb, that a cruel and magnificent evolutionary miracle was set in motion. Toba was not merely a catastrophe, it was the most severe biological filter our species has ever faced. The rules of survival were rewritten overnight. Those who were physically frail, whose bodies could not withstand the gnawing cold and the pangs of starvation, were the first to perish. Their bones became one with the frozen, ash-covered earth. But physical weakness was not the only fatal flaw. Those less intelligent, whose minds were rigid and negative consumed, the familiar roots and berries were buried under a sterile blanket of gray. To cling to the old ways was to embrace death. Groups that failed to coordinate, that could not master the intricate social dance of sharing warmth and scarce resources, fractured and vanished. Their flickering fires went out, one by one, leaving only silence. Who remained? Out of a global population that may have numbered in the tens of thousands, perhaps only a few hundred breeding pairs survived. They were the outliers, the exceptions. They were the most adaptable, the most ferociously creative, the most deeply social beings on the planet. The immense pressure of natural selection focused its full weight upon the human brain. To survive without the megafauna, they were forced to become engineers of miniature death, inventing sophisticated snares and traps to catch small, fleet-footed game. To survive without the bounty of the land, they were forced to look to the water's edge, to find new ways to harvest the alien life of the sea. To survive the relentless, biting cold, they were compelled to become masters of insulation and combustion, perfecting their clothing and their command of fire. This genetic bottleneck scoured humanity to its very foundations, but in doing so, it inadvertently forged the survivors into something new. They were an upgraded iteration of human, sharper and more resilient than any creature that had come before. From the ashes of near extinction, a new kind of human, more formidable and more dangerous, was preparing to inherit the earth. As the African continent, the very cradle of our species, withered into an arid, lifeless expanse, the last bands of survivors were driven into a corner. The vast savannas, once teeming with life, fell silent. Behind them lay a continent of desert and ash, a testament to a world that was no more. Before them lay the vast, cold, and unforgiving ocean. They had reached a dead end. It was here, on the coast of what is now South Africa. The sea, though terrifying and alien, immense thermal mass, still held a vast and stable reserve of protein. The hunt for elephants and buffalo was replaced by the patient gathering of clams, snails, and mussels. Survivors learned the rhythms of the tides, venturing into the shallow waters at its ebb to catch fish trapped in rock pools. This was not a mere change in diet. It was a profound biological and cognitive turning point. Modern nutritional science illuminates the significance of this shift. Seafood is extraordinarily rich in the omega-3 fatty acids and complex nutrients essential for brain development. For thousands of years, isolated on these shores, our ancestors consumed vast quantities of this cerebral fuel. This new diet, combined with the relentless cognitive demand to solve complex problems of coastal survival, stimulated the Homo sapiens' brain to evolve in an astonishing new direction. We did not grow larger. We did not grow physically stronger, but our minds became orders of magnitude sharper. At Pinnacle Point, archaeologists unearthed evidence that rewrote our understanding of the ancient human mind. The technologies possessed by the Toba survivors were tens of thousands of years ahead of their time. They were not simply smashing stones together. They had mastered the complex art of heat treatment. They would bury silkrete, a fine-grained stone, under a carefully constructed fire. By heating the stone to a precise temperature, a process requiring foresight, patience, and a deep understanding of materials, they could fundamentally alter its molecular structure, making it far easier to shape into deadly, leaf-thin points for their spears. This was not the work of a primitive mind. It was the dawn of chemistry, of engineering, a multi-step process that demonstrated a capacity for abstract thought previously believed to be impossible for that era. In that crucible of cold and darkness, we were nearly erased. But the few who endured did not simply survive, they were transformed. They emerged from the long winter bearing the neurological and technological toolkit that would allow them to conquer not just a recovering continent, but the entire planet. Every human alive today is a descendant of that small, desperate band of coastal survivors. The ingenuity that first chipped a heat-treated stone is the same ingenuity that would one day reach for the moon. The fire they nurtured in a seaside cave was the first spark of a flame that now illuminates the world, a testament to the indomitable will forged in the deepest despair. In the deep silence of prehistory, a profound transformation was taking place. Within the flickering firelight of coastal caves, our ancestors were conducting a controlled alchemy. They were subjecting silkrete stone to the transformative power of fire, not to destroy it, but to change its very soul. This was no accident. It was a deliberate, calculated process. The intense, carefully managed heat realigned the stone's molecular structure, coaxing from the raw material a new potential. It became more brittle, more predictable, easier to shape. This was humanity's first foray into material science, a quiet revolution born in the embers of a heart. From these tempered stones, they crafted tools of unprecedented lethality and precision. Tiny, razor-sharp blades, no larger than a thumbnail, known to us as microliths. These were not crude hand axes. They were components of a sophisticated system. Each flake was meticulously hafted to the end of a wooden shaft, creating the world's first projectile weapons. The spear, and perhaps even the bow and arrow, were born. This single innovation rewrote the rules of existence. The hunt was no longer a chaotic, intimate clash of flesh and fang. The deadly dance with megafauna, once a high-risk gamble, was now a calculated engagement from a safe distance. Humanity shifted from being a reckless, close-quarters predator to a strategic, tactical killer. The calculus of survival had been fundamentally and irrevocably altered. Yet the most devastating weapon to emerge from this crucible of near extinction was not forged from stone. In those same caves, archaeologists unearthed something else, something that speaks not of survival, but of consciousness. They found carefully ground blocks of red ochre, their surfaces etched with deliberate, geometric patterns. These were not tools. They served no practical purpose in the hunt or the gathering of food. They were symbols. They were art. For the first time in the long story of our species, we have evidence of minds turning inward, contemplating abstractions, beauty, and the very concept of us. To share these new, intangible worlds required a tool more powerful than any stone blade. Complex language was the inevitable consequence. How else to convey a myth, a memory, or a shared identity? The immense pressure of the genetic bottleneck, which had reduced our species to a few thousand breeding pairs, forced this evolution. Isolation demanded deeper communication. Scarcity demanded tighter coordination. The loose, fragmented tribes of the past simply vanished, unable to withstand the strain. In their place arose communities bound by the powerful trinity of blood, a shared tongue, and a common culture. The bottleneck, in its terrifying indifference, had acted as a planetary filter, stripping away the superfluous and leaving behind a more resilient, more cooperative, and more cognitively sophisticated form of Homo sapiens. Millennia crawled by. The volcanic winter induced by the Toba super-eruption slowly receded. Earth's atmosphere began to heal, and the rains returned, washing the ash from the sky. Life, tenacious and patient, reclaimed the scarred landscapes. And with this global renewal came a human resurgence. From a fragile population of a few thousand, our numbers began to explode, fueled by abundant resources and a vastly superior technological and social toolkit. They did not remain idle. Around 60,000 years ago, the climate shifted once more, and the gates of Africa swung open. But the humans who stepped out onto the world stage this time were not the timid wanderers of earlier migrations. They were a different breed entirely. Warriors, inventors, and artists forged in the fires of a global catastrophe. They carried with them a lethal arsenal, elegant projectile weapons, a mastery of fire, the power of complex language, and a remarkably uniform yet resilient genome, the inheritance of their bottlenecked ancestors. They flooded into the Middle East. They swept across the vast plains of Asia. They advanced into the frozen heart of Europe. Along the way, they encountered their distant cousins, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. These were other human species, survivors in their own right, but they had been weakened by the same climate disaster and had not undergone the same explosive cognitive and social revolution. The outcome of that meeting, played out over thousands of years, seems to have been decided before it ever began. Within a few short millennia, the others were gone. One by one, they vanished from the fossil record, leaving behind only tantalizing traces of their existence. A silent planetary replacement had occurred. Earth now had only one master. The desperate survivors who once huddled in caves, etching patterns onto clay, had become the undisputed kings of the planet. The Great Revival was complete. 74,000 years ago, a pillar of fire threatened to extinguish the human flame forever. Today, the 8 billion souls who walk this earth are all descendants of that small, tenacious band. The echo of that ancient fire, the genetic scar of that near-extinction, is a permanent inscription within our very DNA. A chilling testament that the masters of a planet were once merely a handful of survivors, clinging to the edge of existence. This world of stone and water has no need of us. It spun in the darkness long before our arrival, and will continue its silent journey long after we are gone. Yet, upon its indifferent surface, our ancestors fought. Against the crushing ice, the searing drought, and the ever-present shadow of extinction, they clawed out a space for themselves, claiming the right to exist not by decree, but through sheer, desperate will. We are the children of cataclysm, the improbable descendants of those who survived the fire and the flood. Our history is not a gentle ascent, but a story written in the ash of supervolcanoes and the bones of failed species. Each step forward was taken on a path cleared by disaster, a legacy of resilience forged in the heart of chaos itself.